It was the political establishment that sought to historize the Jesus figure for social control. By 325 AD in Rome, Emperor Constantine convened the Council of Nicéia. It was during this meeting that the politically motivated Christian doctrines were established, and thus began a long history of Christian bloodshed and spiritual fraud. And for the next 1600 years, the Vatican maintained a political stranglehold on all of Europe, leading to such joyous periods as the Dark Ages, along with enlightening events such as the Crusades and the Inquisition.
Regarding Constantine, Dr. Ben Witherington III writes, "What then did Emperor Constantine have to do with all of this process? Constantine ruled as Roman emperor from about AD 313 to 337. The truth of the matter is that he didn't take full control of the empire before 324, or very shortly before the Council of Nicéia. This fact alone should make evident that most theological issues, including those about Christ's nature, had taken a rather definite shape and trajectory before Constantine had anything to do with them. At the Council of Nicéia, Constantine seems to have favored Christ's true divinity, but he was no theologian, and it certainly wasn't he who wrote the Creed of Nicéia, nor can it be said that he determined the canon. Constantine mainly pronounced the benediction on the deliberations that had already been formulated. Zeitgeist is correct about the Roman Catholic Church's long history of bloodshed throughout the Dark Ages, the Crusades, and the Inquisition. However, these facts do not negate the credibility of Christianity, but rather demonstrate the sinfulness of man. Regardless of how later professing Christians behaved, Jesus taught his followers to love all people, including their enemies, and to remain peaceful with all people at all costs. Violence, bloodshed, and spiritual fraud in the name of Jesus does not come from the Bible, nor does the New Testament condone such events. Anybody who reads the New Testament for themselves will see that violent Christians live contrary to what the Bible teaches, and are therefore not followers of Jesus at all. As presented earlier, there are numerous non-biblical historians who speak of Jesus. Thus, it was not the political establishment that sought to historize Jesus. This is not to say that the Bible has not been perverted and taken out of context by the political elite for social control throughout history and even today. In the secret FEMA plan to use pastors as pacifiers in preparation for martial law, this debriefing tells pastors to help implement FEMA and Homeland Security directives. FEMA directors told pastors to preach specific passages to their congregations like Romans 13. The Bible passage often taken out of context by dictators like Hitler to hoodwink Christians into supporting him. While the Bible teaches in Romans 13 and 1 Peter 2 that God has given law enforcement officials of worldly governments the right to enforce penalties of crimes and to go to war against other nations, this is not a Christian duty. The Bible does not teach Christians blind submission to authority, but in many cases to resist the ordained powers in order to obey what God has commanded. If the state's orders are in conflict to Jesus' teachings, including murder, war, idolatry, etc., then resistance to those powers is obedience to God. Zeitgeist's argument is invalid because there are several examples of civil disobedience in the Bible. For example, Daniel chapter 3 documents a few of the Hebrews' unwillingness to compromise the commandments of God in submission to the Babylonian Empire. Exodus chapter 1 speaks of the Hebrew midwives who refused to obey the Egyptian Empire's commands to kill male babies, and Joshua chapter 2 documents the harlot Rahab who housed the Hebrew spies and hid them from the authorities. The book of Acts is full of examples of how the apostles of the early Christian church disobeyed the Jewish authorities in order to preach the gospel. Peter taught to obey God rather than men.